All right, so we'll just get right into it. Uh, so I wanted to do something kind of based on evolution. My background is like biology, so I thought I'd take Conway's Game of Life and kind of implement new features and elements that are kind of somewhat mimicking, very basically, kind of the early evolution of cells, specifically kind of eukaryotic cells. So it started kind of with the template of the Game of Life, and then just kind of added things iteratively. Uh, so so first I'll kind of just talk about it briefly, and then I'll run it, and we'll see if it behaves itself. So kind of how to differentiate elements just by color. That was the easiest way to do it. So there's red and blue, which are kind of like two different prokaryotic species, let's say. Green, let's say an early eukaryotic species that comes from the symbiosis of two prokaryotes. And then there's kind of white and purple squares that just represent, so white you can think of a toxin, or just some sort of harsh environment, maybe high temperature, something like that. And purple is an energy source, think of like a hydrothermal vent or sunlight or just, I don't know, carbon source of some sort. And then the green cells evolve into orange cells. So the green cells are just like single cellular eukaryotic cells, and if they spend enough time in the purple region, they become orange cells, and then orange cells can kind of stick together and form multicellular eukaryotic species. So the initialization of the grid is just the red and blue species, which are randomly placed, but in like a kind of defined area that overlap somewhat. You'll see that. And then you have, you can input a certain amount of white and purple squares. And then, so the kernels of the species are just a 3x3 grid following the Moore's neighborhood. And then the white squares, kind of just to make it easier to see, the white squares themselves are a 3x3 grid, but they kill the red or blue cells that go near it within a 5x5 grid. Okay. And then, so the rules. So I played around with a few rules. A lot of them kind of like explode kind of exponentially. So these are fairly stable. So it's just red and blue, same rules, birth 3, and survive 1, 2, or 3. And then if the red and blue overlap, so they kind of work on different grids. But if they overlap, there's a 50% chance that they'll become a green cell. And then the green moves randomly, up, down, left, or right. And its lifespan is in like frames or steps. And you can change that parameter. And yeah, so basically if the green is within a purple area for the duration of its lifetime, it becomes the orange cell, which can then stick together. And yeah, additionally, if the green cells overlap with the purple squares, their lifetime resets. So it's kind of like rejuvenates them. So each of these species kind of has their own grid, but they can interact with each other. And yeah, as you'll see, I only have a CPU, so it runs quite slowly. But yeah, like as I added more species, it kind of got slower and slower. But I'll run it for you anyway. Yeah, and so there's a bunch of different versions that I got from it. I think so. The first version was like a mistake. It's just the cells weren't interacting with each other properly. But I think they look like it looks quite cool. But the second one looks less cool and it's slow, but it follows most of the rules that I put into place that I wanted for the outcome. So I'm just gonna actually run it live and get a live performance here. Let's see. Hopefully the laptop doesn't take flight. All right, so yeah, as you see, it's kind of, it randomly places a certain amount of purple and white squares, and then also has an area of the blue and red different prokaryotic species.
This is version 1 or 2?
So this is version 2. So as you see, the overlapping regions will create these green squares that just move randomly with a predetermined lifespan, and it might take a little while for an orange to appear. But and then the oranges, I again wanted them to have random motion, but yeah, I got to look into it more because they seem to either just forever go left or right or up and down. So yeah, it shouldn't be too hard to fix that, but I haven't fixed it yet.
Oh, there is an orange down there, down to the left.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I think that's two stuck together. So like, as soon as they meet each other, and also the orientate. I initially wanted it to be like like the game of Snake on like the old Nokia phones. I kind of wanted it to be like that, but that wasn't exactly what it did. Yeah. So yeah, the longer it goes on, kind of yeah, the more oranges you'll get, and the longer they'll get, and yeah, they'll kind of just keep going indefinitely, up, down, or left or right. So yeah, and I can play the other version, which I think is cooler, but really didn't follow any of the rules I wanted to.
So is this because of a bug or it was?
For the first version?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like every time I try to implement something new, it like broke something of like another grid or something. And just because it didn't do what I wanted to do, I kind of ignored it. But then when I was kind of like looking at it again, I was like, this one's actually way cooler. So as you'll see, the initialization should be the same, I think. Yeah. But I mean, you'll see immediately, like, you'll get green species everywhere when they should only be in the overlapping regions. But you get these like cool gliders that are kind of spearheaded by red, and sometimes if they hit the white areas in certain orientation, they will like turn, which is kind of cool. And I haven't kind of looked into it enough to figure out why, but yeah.
You also have gliders which go horizontally or just
Yeah,
vertically?
they should go.
So here I think it's too field to see them, but
So they do turn, so
Okay.
they should also go. And then sometimes I've implemented if you like, wait, will this guy turn? No, he'll die. So I kind of like made like left and right click.
there is one going horizontally. That's right.
So sometimes you can turn the direction if. So left click puts some red squares and right click puts some blue squares.
I see.
But for whatever is wrong in this script, like as soon as you press it, they kind of, for some reason, if reds overlap, they create green, and if blues overlap, they create green. So everything kind of just turns green. But it is kind of like stable with some sort of, I don't know, order.
Some of the purples turn green also,
right? Yeah, so I don't know why this happens too, but when, will this work? Yeah, so when a green touches a purple here, it just stays green.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically it. And then yeah, so I'd like to do a few more changes to get it to. So what I wanted it to do, the initial kind of goal, was to get these, first of all, these orange cells made, which it does, but then to also have a maximum of 6 cells that then becomes 3 cells, and move in kind of all orientations, not just vertically or horizontally. And then, yeah, just play around with parameters and add extra parameters, such as the green cell's lifespan is decreased when it touches certain toxins or white squares or whatever other parts you implement. So yeah, that's basically it.
So I have a question about the orange ones. So the orange ones are really multicellular. So it's when two greens assemble, you get
So first, the greens have to be in the purple patch
right.
for the duration of their lifetime. So first, like they go to the purple patch,
Yeah.
their lifetime is restarted, and if
Okay.
they're in that patch for that lifetime, they spawn a orange cell.
Okay. And so, but the orange cell can be multicellular.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, only the orange one. Yeah.
Right. So I was wondering how does that work? Because usually, kind of, for example, the snake example you mentioned. So this is really hard to do in a CA, right? Because in snake, all the cells kind of have to move in the same time
Yeah.
step, right?
So that's what I wanted it to do, and
Okay.
I wasn't able to get it to do that. I
Okay.
wanted it to, just go to the first orange cell and make that go in any direction, and everything go to the next position.
Yeah.
But I wasn't able to do that.
Yeah, I
So
see.
sometimes they'll kind of even make like a horseshoe shape.
Yeah.
And just keep going left or right or up
Right.
and down.
Yeah. Because in general, it's very hard to kind of keep a multicellular thing in a
Like
CA,
together.
right?
Yeah.
So I think one idea how to do this would be that when an orange cell moves, it gives kind of a trace. And then if there's an orange cell behind it, it will move towards the trace. But then the problem is that you have to stagger the updates, right? First,
So kind of like in the ant.
yeah, similar to this, but it's very difficult to do it in the same time, right? Because
Yeah.
the in the state, the cell here doesn't know where the other cell will move. Or,
Right. Yeah.
But okay.
Probably make it
Yeah.
slower also.
It's exactly. Other questions? Otherwise, I have. Yeah. So I was wondering how many grids, different grids, do you have in total? Because you mentioned overlapping. So when you mean overlapping, is it really they're on the same cell but in different grids?
Yeah. For the red and blue, yes.
Okay.
And so they have to interact to know if there's a red and blue in the same pixel or the same
Okay.
square.
Yeah.
And then give a 50% chance of turning green or not.
Okay. And the green lives in yet another grid?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
Yeah.
So there are 3 grids in
So
total.
there's 3 grids, and the orange also has its own grid.
Okay, I
So,
see.
yeah.
I see. Okay.
So 4.
I see. Right. So I think that, yeah.
And then I think, so you said it was taking a long time to run on your laptop because of the GPU.
Yeah.
And I don't either, but I use the same kind of, like the multi-channels kind of code that the scale does for, I think it was for variation. And then the thing kind of worked. So, like, I could run it on my computer, so maybe if you change the way you code it, and but it would take a long time. So.
Yeah, so also, like, I have very little computational experience or skills. So I'm sure there's a better way to do it. But yeah, thanks.
No, but I'm not too good. And you see this.
But it's how hard was it to get something which is stable? Because usually it's very hard to get something like that. But,
so for like the actual evolution one?
Yeah. I mean, one which neither explodes nor dies out, but kind of stays.
Initially, I just did the 323 Conway's Game of Life rules, but that kind of just exploded quite quickly. So there was no real rhyme or reason to it. It was like,
of course,
this
the
seems
only
to
way.
work.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But was it hard to find, like to tune it this way?
So initially, I was like, I think giving too many survival numbers, where like 5, 6, 7, 8, and that would just like explode. But when I kind of just kept it low, it seemed to just stabilize.
And the rules like the 1, 1, 2, 3, this is just for red and blue or for others?
Just for the red and blue.
Okay, I see. And I forgot. So the green movement, how does it work?
So just randomly every time, either up, down, left, or right.
Okay, I see. Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, thank you.
Okay, thanks.